Welcome to Spiritual Psychology. My name is Renee Lavallee Mckenna. I'm a therapist and shamanic healer, and I'm here with Linda Lombardo, who's a certified forest therapy guide and a longtime life coach. And we're going to talk about forest bathing, which in my understanding is a practice that comes out of Japan. And if you enjoy this video, please give us a like and subscribe. And Linda, why don't you tell us a little bit about forest bathing and how you got into it?
Sure. Hi, Renee. So nice to be here. So two different trails to go down. How I came into forest bathing was I had been a manager of management and leadership development in the corporate world, something very different than what I am now. And when I left the corporate world, I was trying some of my more creative passions and devotions to see where I might want to spend most of my time. And as a longtime life coach, I loved what I was doing, and I knew that there was still something else that wanted to happen there. And a friend of mine, who will forever be known as the person who changed my life, she said to me, "Have you heard of this thing called forest bathing?" And honestly, I hadn't. And she said, "Well, you should be doing it." And don't ask me why, but for some reason I followed up. I saw that there was going to be a training in the Berkshires that would later lead to more of a practice into certification program, and I signed up. And not only did I sign up at the time because financially I wasn't working. Another friend of mine, started a Kickstarter for me, kind of a GoFundMe. And it was really quite astonishing to see my friends and even some people I didn't know very well rally around and say, "Yeah, Linda, go for this thing, go for forest bathing." So that's how it began. And, the rest is history, as they say. Forest bathing itself, I learn more and more about it as I do it. Forest bathing began in the 1980s in Japan. And the Japanese government recognized that there was something going on with the physical, the mental, the emotional, and even the spiritual health of the culture and of the population. More and more of our ways were being adopted, and less of what we might expect from a Japanese way of life was being practiced. And with something, I want to say something like 6,000 miles of wooded trails in Japan, they wondered if it wasn't the fact that people had gotten away from nature. And so the Japanese went about it in a very scientific way. And they, with a control group or two, they practiced forest bathing, or at least being with nature, walking through nature, walking in nature. And some of the groups walked in urban areas, some of them walked in laboratories, and most of them had never really been doing any walking before this. The interesting thing was that one of their tests was the cortisol level in the body. And cortisol is the body's stress hormone, responsible for fight, flight, or freeze, right? And can produce, with too much cortisol in the body, it can produce inflammation, and that leads to all sorts of other diseases that we have as humans. And I don't think it was any startling discovery that at the end of a walk, people's cortisol levels went down, because we all know being in nature is soothing. However, cortisol levels never went back up at the start of every walk to where they were before the people began walking. And I don't know what that says to you, but to me that said that being with nature actually can help us control the chemistry in our body. We control stress and trauma differently. I always hesitate to say better, but we control it differently than we did before we began walking in nature. So I'll stop there for you, because that's a lot.
So what's the difference between taking a walk and forest bathing?
Great question. So the difference between taking a walk and forest bathing is sometimes we take a walk. We might take a walk to be with a friend. We might take a walk because we want to get our steps in today. Lots of different reasons to take a walk. And sometimes it is to calm down and maybe cool off a little bit. However, forest bathing, a guided forest bathing walk, you are opening up to all the possibilities and the invitations that a guide is going to share with you. And so invitations, that's a big word. And that really says that you're invited into conversation with nature. You're invited into connection with nature. And how you choose to do it is really up to you, because we're not all the same. Some of us will run up to a tree and want to hug it. Other people want to kind of stand back a little. They're not so sure. Do I want to touch this? Should I be doing this? Or, some people don't even like to walk on the grass. And so forest bathing really slows you down. It brings you into the present moment. And so you notice what's happening around you in the present moment. One of the things that I love, one of my favorite invitations, is what's in motion when it isn't me. So we are very destination oriented. If I said, we're going to go through the door on the other side of the room, suddenly everyone's attention is on the door on the other side of the room and nothing in between. And so we're all about the in-between, or the liminal space. So what's in motion when it isn't me simply says you're going to walk slowly. You're going to be looking all around you, up and down, and going up to plants. Trees. Some people, especially in arboretums and preserves, the first time I step onto the grass, they're like, wait a minute, I can do that? Or if I go to a tree that's on the other side of a walkway, I've always wondered about that tree, but I didn't think I was allowed to go up to it. And so taking away that hesitation about connecting with nature really allows a deeper curiosity and a deeper connection there. So that's kind of scratching the surface about what the difference might be between walking through. You would typically not notice half of the things that we're going to notice when we're forest bathing.
I had the great opportunity a long time ago to do a 3-week retreat with the Zen monk Thich Nhat Hanh of Vermont. And everything in that 3 weeks was done mindfully. And mindful walking was one of the things that we practiced all the time. And at first, it will make you fucking crazy because everybody's walking so slowly, right? But really, and this was a beautiful campus. We were on the University of Vermont campus in Southern Vermont, and noticing the sky and the grass and how the earth feels under your foot and the tree. And I myself, with my spiritual psychology work, which works a lot with nature spirits, am deeply immersed in the idea that everything has life force in it. So I've always been friendly with plants. We were talking earlier about like tree is one of my things. I'm a big tree person. And I have a particular ability to be able to like feel the life force of plants, which a lot of people can, but not everybody can, right? So so having that experience of really slowing down and practice mindfulness for a long period of time was completely life-changing for me. As a matter of fact, I think that's when my deeper experience, that was before I had any shamanic practice at all, my deeper experience of the life force of nature and the consciousness of plants in this really friendly way, that I started to feel like the earth in any place was my yard. Like I feel like all of it's my yard now. And all the plants are my friends. And so it's very exciting to me that people don't have to go to Vermont with a dead Zen Buddhist monk to, because this is starting to happen all over the place. I had a friend in California, which is how I connected with you, and you're in Long Island. And so obviously, at least on the coastlines, forest bathing and this mindfulness with nature is really catching on, I think.
It is. And I would love to circle back to what you said about Thich Nhat Hanh. At the beginning of almost every walk that I do, I share one of his quotes. And yes, and there's a quote, and I've turned it into an invitation, in fact. There's a quote that says that humans print so much sorrow and anger and anxiety on the earth with how our feet touch the earth, and that we should print more love and compassion and care, that we should walk on this earth as if our feet are kissing the earth. And so I invite my forest bathing participants, because there's always a walk to somewhere, a short walk perhaps, to begin, to imagine what it would be like to be walking on the earth as if your feet were kissing the earth. Because we take the ground for granted, Renee, that it's there. And we also don't think of it as a sentient being. And bringing that consciousness to the forefront when you're walking, going back to your question, I'm walking through the park, I'm walking through the woods, or I'm on a forest bathing walk. Typically, when you're just taking a walk in nature somewhere, you're not necessarily thinking that every step you take is another kiss on the earth. It's this, the sentient being, our home. And so I really begin with the soles of our feet. And there's something very interesting that's come up out of that for me too, when you think about reflexology. Because reflexology says that there are points on the soles of our feet, and those points on the soles of our feet are attached to organs. And we know that every organ is attached to an emotion. So if we are walking with anger and sorrow and anxiety, how is that message coming back to us? And we're certainly sending that message to the earth. But how is that message coming back to us? And so if we can be conscious of how we're stepping on the earth intentionally, I always said, I believe it's called, the bottoms of our feet are called soles for a reason, just spelled incorrectly perhaps. That this connection that we have with our feet and the earth can be so potent, so powerful, if only we begin to notice it and pay attention to it.
Oh, I love that soul connection with the earth.
Yes.
That is really, really beautiful. And the idea that the earth holds us to her always with gravity, that we aren't aware, that we are always supported by the earth,
right,
and the universe. Again, that we are unconsciously, and so many of us feel unsupported and disconnected. And it's one of the great healing qualities of nature, and why that is the base of my work in connecting people spiritually, however they understand it, is that we actually are connected. We're breathing the air in and out every moment. Our heart is beating. We don't have to think about it. And we are held to the earth, and without any effort, right? And the great thing that we have as humans with free will, actually, I think different from other sentient beings, is this ability to shift our intention and to completely change the quality of our experience and our energy and resonance, and what we bring, like you're saying, to move from angst or suffering, and to consider that each step is kissing the earth or blessing the plants as we walk by them, rather than just being in our own problem fantasies that most of us live in all the time, that are even happening at the time, is a real total shift in our experience. What we put out, like you're saying, what is coming back to us. And that is such a teaching in what we put out is reflected back to us, often multifold. And that is an enormous power that we have to shift our own inner experience just by the intention of walking with compassion or love or kindness.
It's such a simple thing.
So beautiful. Well, that's Thich Nhat Hanh. I love, there's no coincidence, and we didn't know the Thich Nhat Hanh connection, of course, before this. And there's all serendipity. And, I love he passed, I believe, last year. And he continues on, right? His very simple teachings.
Yes.
Of just being in the present moment and being an agent of peace, finding peace within ourselves and bringing peace into the earth. And then that peace is reflected back to us.
Absolutely.
So beautiful. It's really interesting because I lived in San Francisco for 23 years. I lived near the beach and near Golden Gate Park on one side, and then a place called Fort Funston, which is kind of the edge of the Western world, with big 300-foot cliffs looking out over the sea. But a lot of San Francisco is pretty urban. And I moved to Manhattan last year. And I actually spend more time in nature in Manhattan, where I am right now in the Upper West Side, than I did when I was in San Francisco, because I'm 3 blocks from the amazing Central Park and then 3 blocks from Riverside Park. And one of the things I love about New York, and it's really pregnant in the parks too, because they're always filled with people, is this idea of like, what's moving that's not me? Like, there's so much motion here with the Hudson River and the flow of the highways and the stream of people riding their bikes or jogging through the forest, and all the little animals that are in Central Park. And so that idea of like being part of this living organism that's moving, for me, is just really, really present in New York more than it has been in other places that I've been, in the natural places that are like super accessible, at least in this end of Manhattan, which I'm so grateful for. So where do you take people when you take them out?
Quite a lot of different places, actually. I've led most of my walks on Long Island. I think now, after 5 years of leading walks, I think I've led something like over 225 walks. And unfortunately, we all had a pandemic that happened, and so there's a gap in between there. But that kind of makes the number even more. I want to say more. I'm prouder of it, even because of that, because I'm leading walks, if not every weekend. There are walks during the week for small groups, private groups. Sometimes with my life coaching, I'll take a local client into nature, because nature opens us up so quickly. We become so permeable once we're walking among all that green and those beautiful smells. So I love taking my clients into nature. One of the first things I did was I established relationships with arboretums and preserves here on Long Island, because I knew from having been a life coach for over 20 years that sometimes you feel as if you're standing on a street corner and you're trying to kidnap people to come and appreciate these beautiful things that will change their lives. Right. And I just decided I didn't want to stand on a street corner and try to kidnap people anymore, and I'm just metaphorically speaking, obviously. I've never kidnapped anyone yet. But the idea that arboretums and preserves, they have their own path. They want to teach you about the trees. They want to teach you about the history of the land, at least the history that began with whatever buildings might be on the property. You know, normally they don't often go back beyond 150 years, 200 years, at least here on Long Island. But I always think it's important to acknowledge the first people on the land. And I do a lot of placing our hands on the land, as well as paying attention to the soles of our feet, to just touch the land and then talk about, you know, what was it like 500 years ago, 400 years ago? And who worked here? Who played here? What were their joys? What were their sorrows? You know, their energy is still in the earth, because the earth holds memory and it holds energy. And otherwise we wouldn't need to walk as if our feet are kissing the earth. There'd be no point, right? But as a sentient being, it's holding all of this. And so then I say, what are you noticing now about what your hands are touching? You know, and then we'll go out to the future and talk maybe 100, 200, 500 years from now. Maybe someone is standing on this exact same spot and they're wondering about us. You know, what was it like for those people in the 21st century? They had a pandemic and all these crazy things going on in the world. What were their joys? What were their sorrows? What was life like for them? And then to come back to the present and say, every day we are building a legacy. Everything we do, every word out of our mouth, every footstep, everything we touch. Arboretums don't do that. You know, even preserves, that's not part of what they do. And so when I approached them, they saw immediately that what I had to offer was something different for the people who were members, or the people who just loved to come because of all the different trees and the plants. And you know, a lot of my coaching colleagues, they hold workshops, and so they invite me in to do that kind of deepening of the learning, whatever their learning is in their workshop, and to take people into nature. And I customize whatever it is we're doing that day or on those days to help deepen the learning. I've had birthday parties, you know, people want to celebrate their birthday and say, can you take me and my friends on a nature walk? Or friends that just want to support each other through some difficult times. So, you know, arboretums, preserves, private residences. You know, I've begun to share some of my work at photography workshops, because photography can be very transactional, it can be very means to an end, or it can be an intimate conversation between the photographer and the subject. And I'm an amateur nature photographer. I love taking pictures. And so I've gone from on my walk saying, please put all your technology away. And then people would hide behind trees to take pictures of things, thinking I couldn't see them. So I was creating forest bathing criminals. And to saying, okay, if you really have to take pictures, to this idea that the idea of connecting, of noticing, of just taking that deep breath in and out with another being, like a tree or a plant or the river or the ocean, before you take a picture, actually creates a different connection. And it's kind of interesting to see photos before and photos after. Does it feel like there's a difference in the photography?
That's beautiful.
I think it has so many more applications. We've only just really begun to figure out what this connection with nature can do for us in our own lives. I mean, Renee, the idea is not just like every time I'm stressed, I have to go to the forest and forest bathe. It is to cross a threshold of incorporation on your way out of the forest that says, this is what I'm going to bring into my daily life. This is what I'm going to bring into my relationship. I want to notice what's in motion when it isn't me around my house or with my kids, or maybe with a significant other. And you know, I just want to have that deeper connection in my life.
And so if people want to do forest bathing on their own, what tips or instructions or suggestions would you have for them, Linda?
Well, I I write on something called Substack.
Mhm.
And once a month, I produce something that's called 12 Months of Forest Bathing.
Ah,
And every month it's about here's how you center, here's how you go out. Here are some seasonal invitations that you might try. Like right now with all the leaves falling from the trees, at least here in the Northeast.
mhm.
I tell everyone they're leaf doulas. You are
Mm,
going to help the trees shed these things they no longer need.
mm,
And in return, you're going to let this tree be a teacher for you about what don't you need to carry around with you.
mhm.
What might you want to let go of? Or maybe you're drawn to an evergreen. And they do lose some needles, by the way. But for the most part, they stay green. So what's the secret to staying green all year?
Mm,
As humans, we can't. We really do need some rest and recovery time. And I think winter gives us that. But that might be something that they're doing right now. And then I even suggest teas to bring along on the end of the walk, like an Eastern white pine tea with maybe some dried apple in it. Um, right now, maybe something spicy, something with cinnamon, um, or a chai kind of tea,
mhm.
but nothing with caffeine. It's all herbal, all something that could have been foraged.
Nice. And so if I want to go forest bathing tonight after our talk,
Mhm.
have any suggestions for me in Central Park?
So you're going to do an evening
Mhm.
forest bathing walk. So I love that because everything changes when the sun goes down.
Mm,
I would suggest that you spend time with the air,
mm,
and notice how it feels on your skin. If you were out during the day at all today and you got to feel some warmth of the sun,
mhm,
what is it like now? What Stop and listen. What are you hearing? Is the wind rustling the leaves in the trees? Or are you maybe still hearing a bird at 5 o'clock? You might hear something. You're also going to have human sounds in Central Park. And I say, don't think of them as distractions. Don't think of it as something that you have to try to tune out. Just invite it into the symphony of sound and see, does it harmonize with something happening in nature? And maybe you want to make some sound. Maybe you want to sing or you want to dance to the music that you're hearing. But those are some things right off the top of my head about what an evening forest bathing walk might be, just going solo and to spend some time with nature. Always a tree connection too. Always find a tree that really wants to be with you. You can do some breathing with the tree because you give it the gift of your carbon dioxide,
mm,
and the tree is going to breathe back to you, giving you oxygen. So
mhm,
for those who don't even want to touch a tree, that breathing can be a wonderful connection, or holding on to a leaf at
mm,
the very edge of the drip line of the tree. That's all you have to do. You don't have to go in and hug a tree
mhm.
unless you want to.
And for morning forest bathers,
Mm.
what would you suggest?
So, the morning is beautiful because it's a fresh new day.
Mm,
It's a restart for everything. And at this time of the year, sometimes the ground is still a little damp or the leaves might be damp because it was cold at night and there was some moisture in the air. So noticing what's holding on to the moisture from the night,
mm,
on a leaf, on the grass, you go down and inspect maybe just a couple square inches of grass and see what moisture is there and if there's anything else that might be there. You could take some of the fallen leaves and you could make a circle of fallen leaves and only inspect that one little area.
mm,
Just see what's happening right here in this little world within worlds.
mm,
So if you're up really early, the sunrise.
mm,
Watch how it comes up through the trees, over the trees. What are the colors that you're seeing? You don't really have to go very far. The idea of this is it's not strenuous. You don't need to be rich. You don't need to be athletic. You know, you just need to want to go out and love nature.
Oh, beautiful, Linda. And so, any final words for our people at home to encourage them, or even a really simple practice that they could do, even in their yard?
Well, you know that you mentioned that. I think the plants and the trees we ignore the most are the ones that are in our yards.
Mm.
If we have yards, or if maybe we have a balcony, if we're in an urban area, and or a terrace, or we have plants in the house, just go spend some time with those plants, and not to water them, or not to, fertilize, or, nothing transactional.
Mhm.
Just really to go up to them and see, what do they really look like? Like, what does the bark of that tree in your yard really feel like? Is it, maybe it's growing some lichen or some moss, or maybe there's one or two leaves that are still holding on. What's up with those leaves that are, these are the last to be let go at this time of the year? And just really, give some love
Mm.
to the trees that, sometimes we think of them as landscape objects, but they're lives that we've planted. Many of us, lots of them might have been there before, but a lot of the living beings in my yard have been planted by me.
Mhm.
So I do try to spend time with them and see how they're doing.
And develop those relationships with with these living beings that are providing oxygen for us in our life. Yeah.
Yes, and remember, when it's not transactional, when it's a deeper conversation, we begin to take that into our daily lives.
I just
So
like.
starting in your yard is a great place
Mhm.
to begin forest bathing, or to just sit spot. You must have a spot, in Central Park that you love to just
Mhm.
go and sit
Mhm.
and just witness. Don't try to do anything. Don't try to be anything, and see what happens as you just sit there and watch. And if you can do that a couple times a week, it becomes a practice where you start to really notice how things change around you.
Mm. Mhm. I did a beautiful practice when I was in graduate school with this teacher from the Sami tradition of Lapland. And we did ancestral ways of knowing, and one of our
Mm,
workshops for the whole semester was to sit in the same spot every morning and watch the change at the same time, and to
yeah,
watch the change in the light and the change in the plants. It was really quite a potent, powerful practice.
absolutely, it is.
Yeah. So how can people get in touch with Linda Lombardo?
Well, there's a couple of ways. I do have a website,
Mhm.
which is wildheartnatureconnection.com.
Okay.
And then all my public walks are found on a wonderful site called Forest Bathing Finder.
Nice.
And if you're traveling somewhere and you feel like you want to forest bathe in this new area and don't know where to begin, Forest Bathing Finder may have a guide that's in that area that would love to take you on a private walk, or maybe they have a public walk coming up. And I'm on Facebook, as Wild Heart Nature Connection. I am on Instagram as well,
Awesome.
and on LinkedIn as myself. And so there's lots of different ways to find me.
Great. And all those will be in the show notes. And Linda, so great to connect with you. I'm inspired to go out tonight.
Oh, I'm envious that you're going to get to go out to Central Park tonight. That's wonderful.
Very fun. And so if you liked this video, please give a thumbs up and subscribe, and check out Forest Bathing Finder, or connect with Linda directly. And Linda, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to connect with you as we are all inspired to go out and kiss the earth with our feet.
Thank you for having me, Renee. This was a lovely conversation.
Beautiful. Blessings on your work.